It's a bit laggy on my side.
Welcome to
It's a bit laggy, yeah.
everyone.
It's sound gets video gets later than sound, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining. A warm welcome to everyone. My name is Cindy Wanjiro and I'll be moderating today's webinar. We will be having a webinar today on what can fuel the growth of card games in online casinos in Africa. And on this, we have two panelists with me who are going to be introducing themselves. And I will start with Dimitri. Kindly give us a short introduction about yourself, then we will move to Gali. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dmitry. I am CEO of EvenBet Gaming. EvenBet Gaming is a poker provider. We have been doing this for 20 years already. We are serving now about 200 customers, operators around the world. Mostly, it's all the regions, to be honest, of the world. But yeah, Asia, Latin America, Europe, United States, and now we are live with a few operators in Africa, and we are kind of making first steps to grow in Africa with our games. So primarily we are focusing on poker games, but we are also developing and providing different other card games and skill-based player-to-player games.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Dimitri, for that introduction. Let's move over to you, Gali.
Right. Afternoon. So I'm Gully Harton. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Warrior Lab. We're a management consultancy based out of Cape Town, South Africa, specializing in B2C operational optimization, player development, retention, and strategy. So I've been in the industry now, a little over 13 years. So yeah, very excited for the conversation today. I come from a land-based poker and card background. So that's what started my journey in the industry, was land-based poker, before moving obviously digital and then starting my own consultancy around 4 years ago. So yeah, I'm ready to get started.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, Gali, and thank you, Dimitri, for that amazing introduction. And now we just want to get into the webinar. We'll start with a few videos. So I'll leave it over to the host to share a few videos with you. Then we'll get started. Enjoy. Amazing, amazing. And I just want us to give it up to the sponsors of this webinar. We'll start with Soft Swiss, which is a global tech expert with over 15 years of experience in providing innovative iGaming solutions. And this company offers comprehensive software for online casinos, sports betting, and affiliate management. Let's give it up for them. We also want to give it up for Raventrack, and Raventrack is an advanced affiliate tracking platform that is customized specifically for the gaming industry. Want to give it up for them for choosing to sponsor this webinar today. We also want to give it up to Digitane. Digitane is a sportsbook software and iGaming platform provider, turnkey, and API solutions. It's also a sportsbook, casino, virtual sports, also a payment gateway. We also want to give it up to Every Matrix, which is the fastest growing B2B iGaming technology provider. From best of breed modular software to transformative turnkey technology, it provides online gambling platforms, products, and software to more than 300 global casinos, sportsbook operators, and state-owned or private lotteries. And here, the technology empowers African operators to deliver outstanding player experiences across regulated markets. Let's give it up for them. And finally, want to give it up to Chiron Interactive, which is a technology and software company that specializes in the development and supply of leading virtual sports and numbers games. And finally, we want to show two more videos that I will also let my host show us these two videos before we get into more details about the webinar. Thanks. So finally, we want to give it up to the people who are responsible for this webinar, who made this webinar happen. We want to start with iGaming Africa Summit, which is Africa's mega gaming event designed to unite the gaming industry players across the world in one place, the stunning city of Nairobi, Kenya, from the 4th of May to the 6th of May in 2026. And that's something we are all looking forward to. We also want to thank the iGaming Consult Africa, which is a leading consultancy agency dedicated to supporting sports betting and casino businesses in exploring and expanding into new markets, and that is across Africa. So let's give it up to those two. Amazing. And so at this time, we want to get right into the webinar, and we want to get into really tackling um, what um, what has really brought us to this webinar today. And so I'm going to start with you, Dimitri. I want to shoot this question to you. So, what local, cultural, or regional card game variants, design features, language options, and payment or UX strategies should operators adopt to ensure genuine African market fit rather than simply transplanting Western game formats?
So, thank you for this question. So, first of all, we need to keep in mind that Africa is not a single market. It's 50 plus countries with very different, distinct cultural, linguistic, and gaming traditions. So a true local fit means building from the inside out. So it means, first of all, game formats. So integrate regional favorites like Ovare, Ludo, Kaluki, Timpati, Rami, or even poker adaptations with local specifics, with familiar visual cues, table dynamics, and social elements. And also what mentioned Mancala, it's not a card game, but still it's player-to-player turn-based game, quite popular in African countries. So try to first mix local variations with well-known poker, for example, or blackjack games. And languages, for sure, offer interfaces in Swahili, Yoruba, Hausa, Zulu, French, Arabic languages, and not just just plain English. So it's quite important. Then go into payments. We need to keep in mind that mobile money ecosystems are quite popular in Africa, so it's inevitable to support them, like M-Pesa, Airtel, MTM, and flexible local wallets, and focus on low deposit, very microtransactional payment methods. And finally, get into the product UX. So design and the whole user flow should be rethinked completely from the scratch. So it should be very fast onboarding, clear cash in, cash out, visible fairness, and very light, friendly visuals which are like adopted for local players. This is what we learned with Premier Bet and with Hollywood Bets. We launched recently Sunbet, so we need to rethink completely the whole user journey. So onboarding process, teach players how to play games, not a lot of hassles in the game. So very easy to understand how to start playing, how to make bets, how to win, and so forth. So all these details are quite important to keep in mind when introduce card games into African market.
Amazing, amazing. I totally agree with all those options to just make sure that we are really adopting to what Africa needs. And thank you, Dimitri, for that. And now we want to get into asking about mobile first and app driven delivery of these card games in Africa. How critical is it, and how can operators address connectivity, low bandwidth, device, and data cost challenges to be able to maximize reach even as we are adopting technology and mobile first delivery? Over to you, Gali.
So I think when we're talking about mobile first, especially when it comes to Africa, I mean, this a strategy. I mean, no longer 10 years ago, people were saying, mobile's the direction to go, but today it's a default. If you're regional variants and how this ranges across Africa, you've got certain geographies between 70 and 90% mobile. So today, mobile first is like a prerequisite. I think for many players as well across Africa, mobile is it's their only gateway to online gaming. So that means that success depends on, from a product perspective, how light and fast and reliable your card game experience is. And in order to reach the mass market, operators have to prioritize speed and simplicity. So that would mean things like small app sizes, quick table loadings, potentially offline and low data modes, such as like data free, which we see here in South Africa. The player experience must factor in for network disruption. So that we can't have player experiences being interrupted by network drops or expensive data usage. And I think that's when we start looking into how to bridge the gap. And that's can have like a massive impact. So things like preloading popular tables and compressing graphics, all of that makes a big difference. So operators should, in that way, beyond just looking at like UX and product, they should also collaborate with local networks. They should also look towards how payment providers can impact their experience, such as the data free play that I mentioned. And I think, we've already seen this really successfully rolled out in other apps like sports apps and music services across Africa. So I think it's really a case about meeting the players where they are right now, not expecting them to adapt to you. It's about meeting the player where they are at.
Amazing to hear from you, Gali. And I think we can all agree with you on that. And now, now that we've tackled the salads of the plate, I want us to get really into talk about the growth of card games in online casinos and what can really fuel it. So I want to pose this question to Dimitri. And it's basically about these emerging technologies. What role can they play in differentiating card game offerings in Africa, and what the cost versus benefit trade-off is?
So let's talk about first the biggest trends now. It's AI ML, right, for emerging technology, and it's quite important for card games because as we remember, card games is mostly player-to-player experience, and in this experience, it's very important to employ AI to provide adaptive matchmaking when players on the same level can meet together and play, rather than they're like players with very different level and skills when they meet. Then, as we know, stronger players quickly kill weak novices, and it doesn't create great user experience for newcomers. So like it's nowadays we can use AI and ML to improve this experience and provide adaptive matchmaking, and also like fraud detection, because as we know, in player-to-player games, fraud is quite like massive and usual. So like also AI ML helps us to prevent this, to fight against this, to detect fraud cases and quickly cut them down from the system. And finally, AI ML can improve personalization, provide very personalized experience depending on players' past experience and preferences, offer them like tailor-made content, tailor-made games, limits, speed, and so forth. So like it helps to improve, to increase retention, to increase players' value, and so forth. So AI ML tech is quite important and will be a big trend for the next 5 years in our industry as well. The next, like blockchain, we can mention these. So like, as we remember, Africa is emerging market, so still we can use blockchain for improve fairness and transparency, to help with payments, for example, peer-to-peer payments or instant payments, and also tokenize in-game economies, like use NFTs and tokens to organize gamification and retention mechanics inside the system. So, and finally, AR, VR, and all these technologies still niche, and also we need to keep in mind that they still require very advanced equipment, very wide bandwidth. So right now, I don't think it's like very actual for African market. Maybe like within the 5-10 years, it could be changed, but nowadays it's like not the top priority. So finally, as Gali mentioned, innovation should not outpace accessibility. First, we need to focus on accessibility, so to reach players, and then we can think about innovation.
Yeah, I would say VR and I'd say VR and 3D rendering in general, it's just adding a cost with no real player value in data environments. I mean, Africa is not suitable at this point for VR and 3D rendering and those sort of technologies right now.
Yeah, so maybe 5-10 years it could be different, but nowadays
we hope so.
on existing player needs and what they want to experience right now. Not just cool wrist bells and wrists, you know.
Amazing. So you've touched on AI, ML, AR, and VR, and how they can now bring in the cost versus benefit trade-off. And I want to put another question to Gali. So now this is on card game tournaments, loyalty programs, and community features. How should operators structure these features to be able to drive retention, monetization, and long-term player engagement rather than a one-off activity?
So it's a brilliant question. I think firstly, retention in general isn't about, and maybe this is a bit of a controversial statement, but retention in general isn't about keeping players, or rather people playing longer. It's about giving them a reason to come back. And if we change our perspective on retention, you can apply the same logic when it comes to card games. And I think when it comes to loyalty in general, we have this misconstrued impression about what loyalty is and what retention is. And I think for operators, if they're going to build tournament structures that feel alive, and they do it in a way that it's regular or predictable, the objective has to be focused around what card games is trying to drive, and that's a sense of like community. Just like any other loyalty program, you want to feel a sense of belonging. So if you look at like card games, and I'll use poker as a fantastic example, players love seeing familiar faces. Players love to see recognizable nicknames and avatars and people that they play with on an ongoing basis at their table. Now, and when you couple that with tournaments and you're doing weekly or monthly ladders and you have your top player boards or some kind of live leaderboard shout outs that keeps the engagement personal, that goes a very long way. Now, loyalty programs, they need to start moving beyond just deposit-based rewards. And when it comes to card games and it comes to peer-to-peer, that's where that recognition goes a long way. That we're recognizing that this is a game of time as well as skill. We're looking for consistency, and we want to start creating these like progression paths, if that makes sense. So much like in loyalty programs where you level up and you move from tier to tier, card game has that as well, where you want to make it relevant. So you could be the card master in 1 month, and then you become the table legend or dealer's choice or whatever it could be. And you want to make it relevant to the player. And when you start to do recognition and you start to apply loyalty with something that is relevant, that's where you start to reward the effort and the identity behind the player that's engaging with your product. You're not just spending on building loyalty through bonuses, because then it's almost like it's conditional. You're getting this because you did something, as opposed to we recognize you as part of the product. And I think it's that community feature here that is equally powerful, where if I go back to my roots and I look at the poker club that we used to run, it was a case of, as the group and as your players start to engage, that's where your referrals start to increase. That's where the incentive to bring people into that ecosystem. And Africa in general is a word of mouth culture. So it means more to players to firstly get the recognition, but they are going to become your best promoters. So if you make them feel like they belong, your product will be promoted naturally through. And that's where I believe that real monetization is going to come into it, from community and belonging, because I think it becomes more organic. It's not transactional anymore.
Yeah, I would add to Gali. Totally agree with Gali, and yeah, to be honest, recognition is the strongest driver for player-to-player card games race. So it's all about recognition. It's all about being on the leaderboard. It's all about being the best. So it makes big difference to other verticals, to be honest. Make difference comparing to poker and other card games to other verticals like sports betting and casino. Really, people go to play poker because they can brag about this.
Yeah, well, there's a reason I have cards tattooed on me and poker chips tattooed on me, because the memories and the stories are in the tattoo.
Yeah, very cool tattoo.
Yeah.
Amazing. And even as we talk monetization and as we talk retention, then we are talking about growth and we're talking about risks, because as you grow, then you're going to be facing some risks in your growth. And so I want us to touch on risks a little bit. And it's basically on fraud, duplicate accounts, and player cheating risks. So when we're talking about these kind of risks, what kind of fraud is unique to card games in online African markets, and how do you, Dimitri, how do you think compliance and AML frameworks should now get into the picture and be tailored accordingly?
Yeah, you're right. Card games have weak point because they are especially vulnerable to collusions, chip dumping, team play, and all those of different frauds. So players are very inventive in how to make fraud in playing card games. And African market, there are two amplifiers in African markets for this kind of fraud. First, very fragmented KYC and IDs and players identification. So it adds complexity. And second, very low players value. So what we are seeing that African players are ready to do this fraud and even for very small amounts, like $1-2 free rolls or bonuses. So you can get flood of fake accounts, duplicated accounts, or chip dumping and so forth. So operators need to be ready for massive amounts of fraud cases. But comparing to Europe you can focus only very high roller games and prevent fraud only for them, because players are not interested to do fraud for low stakes games, and then you can be focused. But in Africa, you need to like really make massive anti-fraud mechanism. So what operators can do to to prevent fraud, to fight efficiently against this? So first, like implement device fingerprinting and behavioral analytics, as we mentioned, AI, ML technologies, to identify fraud cases, to identify patterns, and prevent them. So like, and integrate with fintech providers, payment providers, to cross-reference mobile money accounts, not only IDs or IP addresses, and build like multi-level scoring system when players need to start with some lower score, and then when they get higher scores and higher trust level, as long as they play, not give like instantly all the freebies when right from the start. So combine technology and human review to get players through some score system. And yeah, so like integrate all these different pieces, bits and pieces of this, and into very advanced compliance framework. I don't want to scare. Everything is available on the market. It's just question is how operators integrate them and work with them in a like seamless way. And then they could efficiently fight against fraud and operate in African markets. So like,
I think the only point that I would add to the list of what you've mentioned is to also educate your players, tell them what to look out for, and help them to understand the signs of potentially suspicious behavior.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Such as chip dumping or collusion and things like that. Because, you know, if there are abnormal players at your table, you should have not just the mechanism to report it, but you should be aware of what to look out for. So educating your audience is a big component on, you know, having extra sets of eyes and ears and whatever at the tables.
Yeah, I agree. Very good point.
Amazing. Thank you guys for the strong points, and still touching on risks, because
I think we may have lost Cindy. I'm not sure.
I still can hear Cindy, but yeah, very like low and interrupting. Yeah.
Okay, so still talking on
Okay.
risks, still
Maybe she will
touching
rejoin.
on fraud. Can you hear me clearly now?
Not really. It's kind of your voice is
Okay. What about now?
not
Much better now?
A bit better. A bit,
Okay.
not much.
Perfect. So we still want to
I actually can't hear Cindy. So at this point, Dimitri, I'm relying on you.
We're still touching on risk, and we're still touching on fraud, because we do understand that this is something that is quite inevitable, right? So we want to talk about responsible gaming. Yeah. And I want to ask you, how can operators and regulators collaborate to ensure that we are having responsible gaming frameworks, specifically for cards? And here we're talking about balancing growth ambitions with safeguards such as underage play prevention, problem gambling interventions, and educational initiatives. How can operators and regulators now collaborate to ensure doing this responsibly?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a big trend nowadays about regulation because what we are seeing from our every year we are doing trend report by asking industry professionals what they think about trends and future developments of the industry. And by our latest research, we have identified increasing worry of the industry of operators about tightening regulations everywhere in the world. So, like, it's going to be harder and harder to operate on different markets, and regulators are like going like in complicated way in a complicated way in regulation instead of helping market to grow and thrive. So, and we have discussed with many professionals that it's inevitable that responsible gaming must be proactive and localize, understanding local players' needs, understanding local situation, and not just being a punishment mechanism like what we are seeing now in many jurisdictions. So use tech. Use tech actively combine age verification through different data, telecommunicator, AI patterns, behavior identification. So different sources get together and work on the tech side. So tech allows to be responsible in a very efficient way, and NGOs and education bodies should work together with operator to educate players, create awareness campaigns in local languages, are accessible to wider audience. So teach players how to play responsibly, what are in-app limits, time reminders, and cool-off models, and all these different like responsible features which help responsible gaming features which help to players to stay within limits. And regulators, as I mentioned, and operators should co own this mission. Like building trust is essential for long-term growth, not just ban, not just making penalties now. Focus on how we can do in 5 and 10 years growth. So I believe Africa has big opportunity to make it right. So make it inclusive and sustainable and responsible, because it's only emerging nowadays, and we are seeing what's happening in other markets. So they can NGOs can consider this experience and do like make it as a competitive advantage, not a burden for operators to work in African markets.
Amazing, amazing. And it's great that you've touched on tech, and you've also touched on the importance of education. I mean, to know is to learn, and learning fast is definitely the route to responsibility. Just incorporating the knowledge about these responsible frameworks will go a long way in helping us to balance the growth ambitions with more safeguards. Thank you, Dimitri. And I do have another question that I just want to shoot at you, since it's along the same lines, yeah? And now we're talking about African jurisdictions. When we're talking about African jurisdictions, I want to know, or we want to know, which regulatory reforms or harmonization efforts across African jurisdictions could make it easier for operators to now be able to scale these card games online while ensuring that there is fairness, there is player protection, there is compliance as we scale.
Yeah, the biggest growth blocker today is fragmentation. So each jurisdiction defines what is skill and what is chance differently. So it would be great if many countries within African region agree in a in the same way how to treat these card games, how to regulate them, and set like continental framework similar to EU model. So the same standards for fairness, RNG certification, and responsible gaming for card games. It would be helpful, very. So like, in order to move along this way, we can get some help from short-term regional blocks like ECOWAX. So we can set up pilot harmonization within these smaller blocks. So for operators, it would be success means building model compliance stacks. So when they don't need to do specific responsible gaming rules for each countries, but they could just plug and play their operation into each country, but according to the more higher level framework set up on the whole continent. So like, and it would be like inevitable to help market grow in Africa. So like it can be regulated differently. It can be taxation could be different on regional level, or even like some specific rules, but technical standards of understanding what is skills and what is chance and chance and so forth should be similar. That it will help a lot to operators to grow in this market.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. And thank you so much, Dimitri, for taking that up. And now off to the final question. We want to understand the key metrics and the data-driven insights that should be incorporated to be able to track and to measure the success of card game offerings here in Africa. As we all know, data is what everyone is talking about, being the new oil, being what is needed to be able to drive the right decisions, drive decision making. And so I want to shoot a question to you, Gali. What key metrics and data-driven insights should operators and regulators track to be able to measure the success of card game offerings here in Africa? And how should they benchmark them against global card game markets? Over to you, Gali.
You're muted, maybe, Gali. No.
Dimitri, Cindy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, now we can hear you. Please go on.
Fantastic. I think case in point about network stability in Africa is being proven right now in this webinar. So, you know, when it comes to answering the question, especially around card games, at least the way that I see it is, you know, success is, it's not just about volume. And I think a lot of people look at Africa as a volume game.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe, especially coming from a VIP background, you know, engagement is absolutely crucial to determine success. And I think the real metric worth tracking here from an operator perspective is retention over time, not only deposit.
Oh.
players and returning player ratio, where you start looking at things like active days per week and average session length, and you start tracking that progression, what you'll see, especially on card games, is like table re-entries. So do they just join a free roll, for example? They go all in on the first hand, they lose, and they don't rebuy. And those kind of approaches. And when you start looking at re-entries or repeat tournament participation, it really does give you a good indication about how the player values the experience, or they value the product, or they value the opportunity to engage. So we start looking at like behavioral insights, which matters as well in this instance, because we're talking about such a social, I would say, product, and we're talking about a community product. Like number of referrals, you can look at the referral conversion that has gone out, which can also signal how healthy your community is. I think as well, when we're looking beyond just the operator from a regulatory standpoint as well, especially around fair play. I mean, we spoke a lot about fraud and the risks that come with card games. And I think from a fair play perspective, we also want to look at things like, withdrawal speed. We want to look at complaint ratios. We want to look at indicators that show whether we are maturing sustainably as a product, as a brand, as a community or not. And, when we look at this from a benchmarking standpoint, I don't think AFRIKA personally should be chasing KPIs like ARPU, for example, the average revenue per user. I think we need to look at this as a long game. Africa is a younger demographic than, say, Europe. So, we are playing the long game here. It's not about, quick, high value execution. We're talking about consistent adoption over time. Instead, what I would encourage operators in Africa to look at would be things like stickiness. How long are people staying with your brand? How long are they growing with you? And I think that the strength of that will really come out of engagement, and loyalty is built through engagement. And it's not a quick exercise. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. It takes time to develop that trust. It takes time. I think right now, if your players are coming back, week after week to the same tables, and they're bringing their friends with them each week, then I would say you're winning. You're doing something right at that point, because, in an African context, that is success. We want community adoption, and we want people to be bringing more people into that community.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Gali, for that. And I'm sure we are all bombarded with all this information about fueling, about how we can fuel the growth of card games in online casinos here in Africa. And so I want us to, or rather, I want each of the panelists to just give us one parting shot, just to help us to read everything that we've just discussed today. Just give us one parting shot. Tell us, what do you think we should do? What can be able to fuel this growth that we really, really are yearning for? So let's start with you, Dimitri, then over to you, Gali.
Sure.
So, you mean the growth of card games in African region?
Yeah, so basically we just want to answer it with the shortest answer possible. We've talked about how we can deal with fraud, we've talked about responsible frameworks, and now we just want to give like a short parting shot that you think should go with us for the rest of, the next few weeks, that it should be in our minds in the next few weeks if we want to be able to fuel the growth of card games in online casinos here in Africa.
Yeah, you should like going global but being local. You should really understand in details all this what we discussed about fraud technology, and there is no silver bullet, right? And there is no like one shot success. So like only those who will make 100 200 small improvements, small things for this market will win. So this is what I believe. So like from the technology side, from the players journey side, from the regulatory and compliance side, from players analysis and so forth. So all these details, localizations, and are quite important. And yeah, this is my opinion.
Amazing. Thank you, Dimitri.
I think
And
from
what
my
about you, Gali? Yeah.
I think it's remembering that, in Africa we already have strong roots here regarding card games, and players already know and enjoy them. We have community games, and we have experiences locally. It's now a case of how do you translate that familiarity online. So I think it reiterates a few points that I've highlighted and that Dimitri has shared throughout this webinar, and that is the sense of, use community as a driver, especially in games, like poker, for example, where players want to compete, but they also want to connect. So build those spaces to accommodate that. I think localization, which I know in many conversations people just throw around loosely, but localization is incredibly important with Africa. So important to its nuances of like localized games. In some cases, certain card games do not apply universal.
Okay. I think as we wait for Gali to get back, I've seen there's a question on the chat, and I hope that you don't mind answering the question on the chat. Balogun asks, what new games or casino is coming soon to Africa?
Gali is here. Maybe let Gali to
Okay.
finish answer.
Yeah. Sure, sure, sure. Gali, please, you can take off from where you had left off.
It's no connection again. I mean, like muted again. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have launched recently with Hollywood bets and Sun bets in Africa. First, we are starting with classic poker, Texas Hold'em, but then we will add more games into the portfolio. So like Maha and Rami and Timpati. So you can expect bigger variation of card games from our side in the next months or year. And so we are going live with a few more operators in Africa.
Amazing, amazing. So to Balogun and to anyone else who had the same question, he said it himself. Be sure that in the next year, there's some good things coming your way. And so over to you, Gali. I don't know if you can be able to give something at this time. Gali?
I can hear.
I didn't quite hear the question there. I'm sorry. It seems I'm having an internet connection problem today.
Sorry about that. We are still waiting on your parting shot. We lost you when you were saying the parting shot.
Right. So before my internet connection dropped and refreshed this, so what was the last point that I said?
Parting shot. You're talking about communities and working with communities.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the community side, so that's just about creating those spaces for them. But the remaining points in terms of Africa to succeed and to grow in Africa is the localization element.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to understand that there are different rules that certain jurisdictions apply for themselves, community-based rules, and really trying to bring that real life experience online. And I think beyond that as well, when it comes
Oh, shit.
to be
What a
able,
bummer.
I don't know if you lost me again.
No, just for a second.
Okay, cool. No, I was just going to say, like, the last thing, which is non-negotiable, which is mobile first design. If you're not leading with a mobile strategy and you're not trying to find ways to simplify the process for people to connect, be it data-free, partnering with local networks and ensuring that games load quickly with as seamless a player experience and player journey as possible, you're not going to capture anything in the market. You're going to create friction. You're going to create frustration. You're going to lose trust. You're going to lose your community. So the reality here is the moment you start creating those environments that are enjoyable, you start creating those environments where players can interact and exchange the experience with each other and refer that experience to their friends, that's when you're going to start to see.
Amazing. Thank you for those great points. I think it's quite precise for us to leave with those key points. And thank you as well, Dimitri. I want to take this chance and thank the both of you for giving your time and giving your knowledge and just helping us to understand better about the growth of card games here in Africa. And so at this time, I will give it up to the host to just give us a few Amazing, amazing, amazing. Dimitri, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Amazing. And so at this time, I want to be able to thank the good people who have been able to make sure that this webinar happens. They have sponsored this webinar, and I will just mention each and every one of them. Number one, we have SoftSwiss. We also have Raventrack. We have Digitane. We have Every Matrix and Chiron Interactive. Not forgetting the good people at iGaming Africa who made sure, who did not sleep just to make sure that this webinar is a success. And finally, I would take this opportunity to invite you all for the iGaming Africa Summit that's going to be taking place on the 4th of May 2026 up until the 6th of May 2026. And this is an Africa's mega gaming event, which is designed to unite all the gaming industry players across the world in one place. And that is the stunning city of Nairobi, Kenya. And you don't want to miss out on that one. And so see you there. Thank you everyone for joining in the webinar. I had so much fun and I hope that you all did too and you're taking something home. And so have yourselves a lovely afternoon, evening, morning, depends where you're coming from, and a lovely weekend at that. Thank you and be
Thank
blessed.
you. Thank you. Bye.